I'm going to invite Pawel now to join us, who's going to be talking to us a lot about the DiRoots plugin and Revit data and how they're using it, how Pawel and Digital Guerilla are using that to start automating Revit data validation. So thanks a lot for taking the time, Pawel, and joining us today.
Thanks, Mo. And hi, everyone. Just checking if you can see, you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's great. Right, so let me just share the screen. Okay, I think that should come up now.
We're on now. Good to go. We can see your screen.
Right, that's perfect. Okay, so today's topic is the Revit information validation process. And just before we begin, a few words about myself. My name is Pawel Kudosz, and I'm working for Digital Guerilla. I'm mostly dealing with like information validation reviews, ensuring that all deliverables are compliant with project requirements. And I'm also working closely on like model coordination and clash detection. But obviously today's topic is the validation of Revit data, and we will focus on this. And the main question is like, why does it matter? So we're focusing on validating the Revit data to just ensure accuracy assurance. And we basically validate the Revit models to ensure that models are fully compliant with the project requirements. And we also do this to keep the consistency cornerstone. So we basically make sure that all disciplines provide only what's required and they deliver it in the desired format. So we don't end up with some scattered information throughout the model. We have like sorted information that is really needed for the client, and we make sure that everything is compliant. And if we put all of this together, all of this leads to a much more efficient process that allows us to save a lot of time and increase the overall efficiency of the project. So now looking at our current process, you can see this complicated workflow, and I won't be going into much detail of it, but just as a high-level overview, we're starting with linking all the models to our project template, which contains all the necessary schedules. Then we export the schedules with DiRoots sheet link. And also on top of this, we need to compile various spreadsheets with Power Query. And additionally, we need to override some pre-configured Excel files to make sure, for example, that correct uniclass tables have been used throughout the project. And just as a summary, this requires multiple configuration files and multiple validation processes to ensure consistency. And our main goal is to reduce this as much as possible. And this is basically where Morta steps in. But I will just show you a quick example of how the validation looks in Excel. So as you can see, we have the validation columns here, and all the validation rules are built on the current COBie schema and NBIMS version 3 chapter 4.2. And this also expands to checking other deliverables such as IFC. So we have these various rules written for each sheet. And to make sure that everything gets fully validated, we need to basically go through each column. And here you will see an example of already validated data, which is color-coded. So in this case, anything highlighted yellow has been checked and highlighted as incorrect. We need to go through every single column and make sure that we're happy with the end result. And to do so, we basically filter each column. So in this case, we would go to type mark blank and filter it by true to show us only the incorrect data, I will scroll back to the left to the type mark column, and I would just select everything and highlight it yellow. And obviously I appreciate that this could be done by some additional conditional formatting, but why we do this manually is to make sure that we only highlight data that is actually incorrect, because in some instances we get some false positives where the formula tells us it's incorrect, but it is actually correct, so we don't highlight this. And to move on, I would just clear the filter and go to the next column until I reached the end. I would review everything once again, and then I would move on to another table to do exactly the same until everything else was reviewed. Here we have our summary table, which basically tells us how many rows have been identified as incorrect. And like, for example, if we look at the space, we have 185 spaces in the architect's model, and actually 185 spaces have been exported with incorrect data in them. So then the architect would be able to go to the space sheet and just review everything that has been highlighted as incorrect. We also have a summary of Uniclass 2015 table. And if we look at like PR products, we have 167 products and 21 of them are incorrect. Maybe just like a wrong table has been used or wrong description provided, something like that. And we also have just a brief summary of object file naming and the COBie sheets and Uniclass 2015 table in just like summarized percentage. And the last one is the data review matrix, where we basically tell to each design team which columns of each sheet should be reviewed. So they can just briefly look through this column and then just go back to, for example, COBie.floor and just review how many rows have been actually marked as incorrect, and they can just go back to the Revit model and simply fix this. And it's important to realize that we don't do this to show you what's incorrect, but we only highlight what should be done to ensure that model is fully compliant and could be submitted for the next stage, for example. And now to what's really interesting about this is the Revit validation in Morta. And we will focus on how Morta helps us with this validation. So for this exercise, we're using Revit to explore the options, but in the future, we're looking into also expanding it to, for example, IFC. And basically, we do this by automated data checks. And thanks to Morta, we can automate all validations and simply export the data from Revit, which leads to saving a lot of time and making this process much more efficient. And we do this with the use of DiRoots sheet link. So we export the data from Revit directly to Morta, and then within Morta, we have the pre-configured tables, which basically validate the data straight away once it gets exported from Revit. So now this is just an example of how the export looks from Revit. So I would go to sheet link, just select the schedule I want to export, click on export, and make sure to select keep formatting of the schedules, as this is important to make sure all linked data gets also exported from the Revit model. And it basically takes a second to load the schedule in. Then I select the project and I select the schedule that I want it to export into Morta. So in this case, this schedule is already pre-configured. So when we have the data exported to Morta, it will be automatically validated. And now we will move to Morta. So this is an example of how the data looks exported to Morta. So as you can see, it has been already validated straight away. And if we look, for example, into the column category, it refers to a source table, which is Revit categories. And we're looking for the categories that should be actually exported in this case scenario. So if there is no match with one of the categories, this is just automatically flagged up as an error. So for example, in this case, columns and curtain panels shouldn't be exported. And Morta tells us straight away that we have an issue here. So we can just scroll down and just review the whole column to see if we have any more errors. But moving forward, we will look at the copy.type.category column, which looks into Uniclass 2015 PR version 120 table. So if there is no match with these details, so if we have, for example, an NA code or we have some EF codes, everything of mentioned is getting flagged up as an error. And we also have the validations column where we get all the validations nicely listed and color coded. So in this case, we can see that copy.type.category is an error, and we could just scroll back here and see that this has been flagged up as an error. And another example is the classification code column. So this works basically the same as the previous one, just looks into a different column. It's not allowing any blanks, so if you have any blank data or incorrect, this just tells us that we have an error here, and we can simply go back to Revit and find this item and just make sure that this contains the correct classification. Now, another example is copy.type. So in this case, we have no in copy.type and it's incorrect, but as you can see, there is no error next to it. And like at this point, our only workaround to this was to write some Python scripts. So we were working with Mo and the team to find a workaround to this, because this includes like more thorough validations, and that Morta wasn't able to just simply show us that this is incorrect. So right now we have this shown in the validation table that copy.type should be yes. And if we review this, then every single row that is incorrect will be just shown here in the validations column. Now, if we look into our validation summary, we have basically all errors listed, and we can simply expand it to see each incorrect row for example, copy.type.description. So if we scroll to this column, we will be able to see that it's empty and it doesn't have an error next to it, but it's still incorrect and we still need to review this data. And as an opposite example, we have classification code error, which is also incorrect. And in this case, it tells us it's an error. So we have two options, but at the end of the day, both of these columns are shown as incorrect. And we need to make sure that we review the validations column and just go through every single cell that needs to be fixed and replaced. And now moving to the summary. So if we were to send this to the design teams, they would be able to basically see what checks have been performed in each table. So if we look at the multi-category type, we would look that we were looking for no blanks for like category, family, type, and so on. Then we have like no duplicates for type mark and, sorry, let's get back to where we were. I think I'll just need to let this run again. Sorry for this. So we're back on track. So looking at multi-category type, we have no blanks. We have no duplicates. Then we will have copy that should be yes or no. So in this case, it's copy.type. And we also have select source, where, as explained before, in category and copy.type.category or the classification they need to match with the particular column, which tells us which value is correct. And then if we move on, we would be able to just go to the summary, which is what we have already looked into. So this includes all validations listed, and all of the design teams would be able to just get into it and see what's incorrect. And then we have all of our exported schedules. So we have copy contact, multi-category type, and we just can go through every single table and find what data is incorrect in this particular table. So as a conclusion, this is obviously still a work in progress process, and our goal is to make this fully automated. So we would like to just be able also share this with the design teams. So it's not only that we receive the models and we validate the data and then we feed this back to the design teams, but we would rather want them to be more proactive and be able to actually use this as a validation tool. So they can export the data from Revit, they can upload it to Morta, and basically, for example, halfway stage 3, they could do it by themselves to identify any errors, because obviously no one likes to be told that they're wrong. And ultimately what we do is we tell to the design teams that you have made this many mistakes and you should make sure that this is sorted for the next upload. So they could do it by themselves and save a lot of time, and then we could step in for like end of stage 3 and do a full review to make sure everything complies with the project requirements. And so this is everything about this process. And just as an extra point, we have obviously Morta is the single source of truth, and what we have been working on in the background is our TIDP and CDE validation. So I appreciate it was already mentioned about IDP trackers in the previous presentations, but what we also do is to validate them against the CDEs. So we have connected them to, for example, 2 CDEs, and we can simply validate what has been listed in the TIDP but never uploaded to the CDE and vice versa. And then we can also compare 2 CDEs. So for example, if we have contractors and clients CDE, and if we want to make sure that contractor has uploaded everything for like end of stage 3, we could simply do a validation, which would tell us that this many files are still missing in the SharePoint. And this could obviously lead to representing this in some simple Power BI graphs, just to show like how many items are still missing. And that's me. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Pawel. Thanks a lot for being with us, and thanks for sharing that. It's amazing to see like the processes that you're driving and how you're moving towards automated assurance and having more trust in the data. I think the other thing that I really like is yourself and Graham really were behind pushing us towards looking at DiRoots and getting us to collaborate with each other. So we really appreciate that, and we're glad that we're glad that you've taken the lead in many ways in that front to start unlocking processes that are useful for you.
Yeah, because obviously before we needed to export everything to CSV files to be able to upload it to Morta, and now we can just do it by a simple click. So for me, it's a game changer.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks.
Have a good one.
Cheers. Bye.
Well, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for being with us today. I realized we had some technical difficulties towards the end, and the numbers may have, like the number of attendees may have slightly dropped. But ultimately, I know that there are still a few of you there's still a good number of you who are online. And really, more than anything today, what we wanted was to start a conversation between you as community members. Ultimately, you're each doing the hard work or paving the way to figure out certain processes with us. And we really view you as partners. You're shaping our roadmap. You're shaping how we invest in the product and what we do. And you've always been really transparent with your feedback with us. And we've tried to take that on board to the extent possible. So if anyone has any ideas on how we can make the community day even more useful to you, and how we can run it better and make it more interactive. We always welcome that feedback, and we'd always really appreciate it. I had a good number of people who have already reached out, from the people who spoke and from the people who are attending, who have already said that they've gained some inspiration from today. So for me, ultimately, and for us as a team, that really was our goal from the day. If you took away an idea for a process that you can potentially improve, if you took a different way of looking at articulating the benefits of what this world does, or thoughts about how to navigate change, or even why things like exports matter, that to me and to the team ultimately means that the day was worth it. It's all about facilitating this conversation. I'm a really big believer that, and our core thesis as a company is that there is a lot that has to be solved, and it's very hard for any one company or any one person to solve it on their own. While there may be other solutions that people can build on, if we start looking at how we're going to do this for all of the processes that are currently tracked and across the built environment, there's a lot to be figured out, as you heard today, and different community members here are really paving the way for us to be able to connect these data sets and imagine a world where these different teams and different trackers are actually speaking with each other and communicating with each other and leveraging data and really making the data work for you when it comes to building. And I think one of the key themes that we came away with was, let's stop doing all of the administrative and management related workflows. Let's actually focus on building. And really, that's our ambition more than anything else. We think that contracting involves a lot of administration, and all of that currently happens on Excel. And I think, if anything, today, the 19 people who spoke today prove that there is things are starting to happen. Companies are starting to figure out how to move away from these manual processes, and that only gives me more confidence that we're going to be able to do much more over the last 5 years. Because while it was just us as a team in the early days, now we have a community of brilliant people that are behind us and that are working with us on figuring out these problems. So thanks again to everyone who joined us. We again hope that you've found value from the session today, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you very much. Have a good day or evening for people who are still with us from the Middle East too. Have a good one.